Hey, this is Dag, and you're listening to Beyond Trek Podcast.
Red alert.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Beyond Trek Podcast. I'm your host, Dag. In the house with me today, I've got Renzo and Big J. We're here to talk to you about Strange New Worlds, Season 2, Episode 2. Well, it's not Season 2 anymore.
Yeah,
Man, I'm getting all these temporal effects. They're just messing with my mind. Season 1, Episode 2, Children of the Corn Comet.
Was that a flub or was that one on purpose?
Oh, I'm glad you couldn't tell. I'm not going to say anything.
I like that one. Good catch.
Children of the... That would be
Good
a
reference.
really cool episode of, just like zombie kids running amok along the Enterprise. I feel like there's already an episode if you think about it, though.
I'm sure we've got a few Invasion of the Body Snatchers episodes, too, so...
Yeah. But fortunately, this episode is nothing like that. And before we dig into it, I just want to give everybody the formal spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert.
So, the episode begins with Cadet Uhura giving a log entry, and she explains that the crew is surveying the behavior of an ancient comet. We get a glimpse of an alien race on an alien planet. They look very novel, nothing we've seen before. Uhura is on rotation and preparing landing party protocol, and therefore things are pretty slow other than the invitation to dinner to the captain's quarters. Ortegas, dressed casually, explains to Uhura that her suggestion to wear her dress uniform was a practical joke, a tradition. A slight bit of hazing, and Uhura, having no time to change, follows Ortegas into Pike's quarters in full uniform. Pike actually notices and calls it out, understanding that there's a bit of a prank going on. Uhura is tentative, and Ortegas has a lot of faith in her that she'll do fine. Upon entering and having a rather difficult discussion with Hemmer and Spock, Uhura eventually settles in, and the dinner begins with Pike's stories. Uhura explains to Captain Pike that she knows, in fact, 37 languages, not 12 as he had originally supposed, commenting that she finds it easier to be understood when speaking others' native tongues. Commenting further that her history going back to Kenya actually involves that as part of her upbringing. She's asked what she wants to specialize in, and Uhura remarks that she's not really certain. Her earlier plans to attend the University of Nairobi were derailed by her parents' death in a shuttle, and her grandmother, a former Starfleet officer, encouraged her to join up instead. Pike encourages her and thanks her for her honesty, and Spock, who had been hard on her before, remarks that if it is not her path, she should make way for others. It's a bit of a tense back and forth between the two of them. Back in Pike's quarters, we find out that Pike has told Una about what he has seen of his future, and she tells him that she does not believe that his fate is written, no matter how many times he may repeat the names of those he may save in his head. Spock comes in on comms to explain that there's a problem with the comet, and on the bridge he explains that the comet will hit Persephone 3, an M-class planet that is home to a pre-warp civilization of the Deleb. There will be no survivors considering the graphics shown. It looks like it's pretty world devastating. It is decided that Hemmer will retrofit photon torpedoes to carry 4 ion engines that will blast the comet away from the planet, therefore saving those on its surface. But it doesn't work. When they impact when they are en route to impact the comet, they hit a force field. In the ready room, Uhura and Spock explain that they cannot find life on the comet, but they have found a structure. Pike has requested that xenobiologist Sam Kirk join the mission and to discuss this matter further. La'an suggested maybe a derelict spaceship of sorts, and Spock tells him that the shields only go up in response to a threat, but they must get onto the surface to disable them. La'an, Spock, Sam, and Uhura are told to go as the away team, and Uhura faces her first real away mission. Chapel administers protection from cosmic rays, explaining that the shot will only last 2 hours as Uhura flinches from the pain. Chapel is very flirty with Spock, and La'an is prickly as usual as they jump onto the transporter pad and beam onto the surface of the comet. Inside the structure of the comet, they find a large egg-shaped structure, and Sam asks Uhura whether or not it's linguistic or decorative. Uhura, demonstrating very rational levels of trepidation about it, explains that the patterns on it repeat and that it might be a point of control for the ship. Sam, of course, steps on it and touches the actual egg-shaped object, and an energy burst stuns him and throws him to the ground. His heart stops, and Spock restarts it using a medical tricorders probe. They are now completely cut off from the ship as the comet's shields raise once again, and they can no longer even communicate with their ship. Uhura is frightened, but as the only linguistics expert on the away mission, Spock reminds her that it is imperative that she use her skills in order to get them off the comet. Back on the ship, Pike needs options, and Ortega suggests phaser harmonics in order to bring down the shields. On the comet, Uhura comments that Chapel was flirting and briefly offends Spock as he tries to guide her towards using logic instead of humor to help the situation. Number one tries to phaser the comet, but the phasers are locked on, and a new alien ship begins to fire on them. They call themselves the Shepherds, and they escort the comet, which they call Mahanit. They believe it to be one of the ancient arbiters of life, and they threaten the Enterprise with destruction if they tamper with it once again. Captain Pike orders them to scan the ship, and the alien captain explains that if it is Mahanit's will to die with the planet, then so be it. It is his will, and his will is sacred. Ortega and Number One explain that their technology on the ship is far more advanced, and that they need to buy time for the away team. The alien captain does not wish to let them retrieve the landing party, and Pike orders the crew to try and find a way to retrieve them anyway. Back on Mahanit, La'an does not seem to believe in Uhura's abilities, and Spock gives the cadet his version of a Vulcan pep talk in order to calm her down. Uhura reveals that this is the first time she's ever been in danger in this way, and Spock reminds her that this perspective can be incredibly useful, especially considering that she is the only person for this job. This pep talk, she remarks, is better than the last, but still a bit rough. She starts to hum an old folk song, which we've seen Uhura do in the past, and the structure seems to respond to the music. Spock notices this, and then La'an remains very skeptical, but Uhura explains that she thinks that the markings are harmonics, and then Spock and Uhura begin a duet that opens the egg structure within. Eventually, Uhura tries a new melody that somehow convinces the comet to lower its force field. Chief Kyle manages to beam them all out in one piece. The alien captain is understandably pissed. He fires on the Enterprise, and the battle begins. Ortega uses some kick-ass maneuvers, some of which are named after herself, to get out of the line of fire, and Pike targets their weapons as Uhura is reminded of the hour deadline. She has to try and figure out how the musical patterns work. Spock suggests that the comet may move itself, and Pike tells Ortegas that if she is, as she says, the best pilot to graduate the Academy, she needs to get them in front of the comet. Once again, using more badass maneuvering, Ortegas accomplishes the goal, and the Shepherds stop firing on them because they don't want to hit the comet, naturally. Pike shuts down all systems other than life support, and hails the alien ship, telling them that the damage they've received has caused terrible damage, complete system failure, and they are ruined, and they need help. The Shepherds agree to help them and engage a tractor beam, because if they don't, the blast from the collision of the comet with the Enterprise would destroy the comet. It is revealed then, after the Shepherd ship places a tractor beam on Enterprise, that Spock has been hiding in a shuttle attached to one of the lesser pieces of rock. Spock radiates heat from the shields, and the surface of the comet responds. The sublimation actually causing parts of the comet to break up, changing its mass, which moves it off course and saves the planet. Spock laughs over comms, remarking that sometimes when things go so badly, all you can do is laugh. Water vapor from the chunk of ice that broke off enters the atmosphere of the planet, making permanent changes to the planetary atmosphere. It will make the planet more amenable to agriculture, and the alien captain, hailing once more, explains that this is the miracle of Mahanit, suggesting that perhaps Starfleet will not be so judgmental of others' faith in the future. On the surface of Persephone 3, we see the people of the planet reacting to rain, and we cut to the captain's log. Pike wonders if it was coincidence that saved them, or something more. Uhura then explains in the ready room that the musical notes created an image of the comet's course, and explains that the comet told them it meant no harm to the planet it was going to hit. Zooming in on the image, the shape of the comet is shown, and it shows them that a chunk of ice that broke off was part of what it was sending them before it even happened. This chunk was the same shape as the chunk that broke off due to Spock's mission. Uhura explains that it might have known its fate, though Spock thinks it's improbable. Spock then speaks to Uhura, stating that after observing her actions on the comet, he thinks she's a valuable addition to Starfleet, should she choose to stay the course. The episode ends with Pike discussing his fate with Una, who then repeats her earlier sentiment. She does not believe that he has to choose his own demise. but believes rather that his fate is what he makes of it. We are left with Pike pulling up information of the children he will one day save on the fateful mission. That's our plot.
Well, let me be the first to say that unfortunately I missed the first episode of Strange New Worlds that we did. But let me tell you, between the last episode and this one, it was actually almost kind of weird to see a Star Trek show that episode that didn't focus on Michael Burnham and Booker, Cleveland Booker, or one person. I wasn't used to that. It was nice to see that there's actually other characters that get screen time and speaking lines. I think Uhura had more lines in this episode than any one of the background bridge crew in a season of Discovery. But one of the things I definitely want to talk about, and won't dive into it just yet, in case anyone has early impressions.
We have subjects to talk
yeah,
about. So.
I want to talk about the Prime Directive.
We'll get to that. That's under the story category.
Okay.
All right, so first, let's break this down on what we saw from the cast and crew. Like Big J was saying, Uhura, banner episode for the character. We probably saw more character background and development about Uhura in this one episode than we did in all of TOS and 6 TOS movies.
For freaking sure, man.
Yes, we did.
And just as a side comment to Jay's observation there, we already know every name of the people on the bridge.
Right.
Second episode, we already know everybody's name almost by heart. Ortegas, Hemmer, Uhura, Spock, Pike, number 1. La'an, who doesn't feature heavily in this episode as she did in the first, but is still present, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Chapel, we didn't see Mabenga, I think, at all in this episode.
No.
But Uhura as a main was refreshing.
Yes.
It was really cool to just get to sit down with her and talk to her at Pike's barbecue, to learn about her parents. Like, it dawned on me in that moment, nobody has ever talked about Uhura's parents ever in anything at any time.
Oh yeah, you're right.
We do know there's one scene in TOS where when she gets the probe that wipes her mind, they talk about how she doesn't have any close family. That's the only thing I can think of.
Okay. Well, that's good that you did a little bit of research on that. But only a little bit of research was needed to find that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And back in those days with TOS, that was like the most character development anyone besides Kirk, Spock, and McCoy got.
Yeah, I mean, it is a little weird to me that they keep giving every character a tragic backstory. That's like the one thing I don't like about this, that my parents died background is kind of getting a little overused at this point. But still, I liked the background. It was well delivered. And the actress does an amazing job with it. So.
We can only hope that Hammer's parents are vaingloriously rich. They own their own island and yacht club and like 17 different spas. And they're working with some idiot Ferengi named Keldar on Latinum properties in the Cardassian system or something. Just have Hemmer be just completely spoiled rich who's doing this for fun.
I'm down with it. I mean, I don't know about a spa, maybe some sort of like ice bath treatment instead, considering Andorian, but otherwise I'm in.
Hey, the Andorian version of a spa is an ice bath treatment.
Fair.
Let's be culturally relative, Renzo.
True. One thing I did want to point out, since you mentioned La'an, that I thought was a little weird was La'an's interactions with Spock on this away mission are a little bit odd to me. She almost seems like she's his superior, but I don't know if that's been clarified anywhere. As far as we know, she's not second officer. She's literally just chief of security, and he's chief of sciences. Their interaction is definitely one where she's giving orders.
It's my understanding that Spock's a lieutenant and La'an is a lieutenant commander. She has lieutenant commander stripes on her sleeves, even though she's only referred to as lieutenant. So it's either a costuming issue or it's a scripting issue.
Because typically lieutenant commander just goes by commander.
Typically,
we've gotten both in Star Trek.
We have. It has been inconsistent, so there's nothing more Trek than inconsistency.
Right.
But it's just one of those things. Good observation. I think they're trying to play La'an as the lieutenant commander.
Yeah, even if she was a lieutenant, Spock could be lieutenant junior grade. That's another thing. Junior grade lieutenants are called lieutenant.
It could be.
Sure.
And additionally, as chief of security, she probably would be the de facto point person for that away mission. You're in an unknown situation. Science sure as heck isn't getting us out of this, so we're counting on the cadet to do her job. In the meantime, I'm pseudo deputizing you to secure stuff.
Well,
Yeah,
and
I
we've
was just
seen
going based on the fact that they were both lieutenants in my mind. So 2 lieutenants, both in charge of each of their own department. I don't think she should be giving each other orders quite like that. It seemed a little strange. But if you're right about her being lieutenant commander based on the stripes, then that makes more sense.
Well,
Okay.
even if both lieutenants in the same rank, you could have one person that just has that natural leadership and take charge kind of thing. There's nothing that says that she can, nothing says she can't.
No, but
and
that's
that-
why I'm asking questions about it, right? Like,
Yeah,
Yes,
that
no, it's good.
it reminds me of Next Gen. There were several times where there were officers above Tasha Yar's rank, but they kind of defer to
because she's a department head.
right. Well, yeah, and because she has the training, so even Riker, they
Remember
all
that.
kind of followed her lead.
Remember that weird episode where Wesley was in charge of not the drunk episode, but the one episode where Wesley was in charge of the engineers for some kind of project,
Yes.
and there were like lieutenant junior grades who had to report to the kid who wasn't even a cadet yet.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, and then the next one to talk about is I just loved Pike's barbecue overall. The feeling
Yes.
of it, the atmosphere for it, his whole demeanor for it was great. Definitely good team building kind of thing, and it doesn't give us the idea that this is like a one-off or rare occasion. This is probably like a every Saturday the captain invites 15 people to his room and makes a barbecue.
One thing I really liked about this is that the warmth of this scene really contrasts against like the family dinner scene that was in season 3 of Discovery when they were all there. And I mean, yeah, it got a little creepy at the end, but in Pike's quarters, the light is warm, it's soft, it's not glaring lens flare light. There's light from above that's sort of reflecting off of the meal and the table. There's natural colors in here. We've got wood, we've got books, we've got a sailing ship. There's little like trays of fruit that for all intents and purposes are probably plastic. But there's a warmth here and a softness and a natural aspect that isn't present in that scene in Discovery season 3, which probably is why that sit down dinner just stands so weird in Discovery versus here, where it's like, oh, this is just Saturday night on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
I also think a big part of that would be the charisma of your host. Think about
Well,
Pike
definitely that. I mean,
and him
it's
as an
the- it's
entertainer
the-
versus Saru.
Right. It's the atmosphere that the captain sets, right?
Yeah.
I do think part of this has to do with the different mission profiles of both Enterprise and Discovery. Discovery was a science ship. It wasn't meant to go on a long-ranging, deep space exploration for half a decade at a time. The Enterprise is, right? So it's got to have a bit more creature comforts, whereas Discovery could probably, by design, just pop back up to a starbase or to a fleet, like a port of call somewhere, Risa or something, and just hang out for a couple days. Enterprise is supposed to be going. It doesn't have the time to stop and just chill. So more creature comforts makes sense. A more warm decor makes sense.
I just think it's neat that we're getting log entries.
Yeah, I mean, we've gotten them on Prodigy and we've
Uhura's.
gotten them on Lower Decks too, thankfully.
Right.
So have like a 12-minute intro scene before our captain's monologue, which we're getting back, which is it's so refreshing.
It feels like watching Star Trek again. Wait a minute. No, I said that wrong.
No, I mean,
You sound like one of those
it's
Trek dudes,
just-
man.
I
It's
said
different.
that wrong. I think all Star Trek is all Star Trek. I wasn't thinking before I said it. It's more of a. It feels more like what I grew up with in regards to character dynamic and just how the episode laid out, starting with that log entry, and you get more interactions with some of the other characters.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's definitely back to the ensemble
How's that
idea
backpedal?
with multiple plot levels. Like that makes sense.
I think if somebody used this podcast episode as their first podcast episode, they might have a different opinion. But yeah, Jay, you've been with us the whole time. We know all Star Trek is Star Trek. I think something that really stands out though is the captain's monologue has been missing for a while, so it tickles the nostalgia bone, which is fine.
Yes.
It's nice, it's wonderful, it's welcome. But just looking at this Pike's barbecue scene, what I'm feeling is like a fusion of Captain Archer, who was kind of the more casual captain, wanted to have those, more social get together kind of things, but also with like a TNG competence porn of the TNG senior staff. Like everybody on TNG knew their jobs well, could get the job done. And if Riker was like, LaForge, we need you to save the warp core because there's only 30 seconds until the credits roll, well, LaForge would be like, I can do it in 10. And then 5 seconds later, everything's fine. We cut to the poker scene and then credits.
Pretty much.
That's kind of just how I feel with the way that these characters are meshing. And it's just episode 2. This is really cool. It's rocking and rolling in a way that the other Star Trek shows haven't, which is cool because it's new and fresh. It's not just rehashing those other shows that are current.
Yeah, no, I mean, I want to point out a couple things that I think are kind of interesting, right? So let's compare the way other captains dined, essentially, right? We don't really ever see Kirk dining with the lower crew members. We sometimes see him stop in the galley for like a bite or two. That's about it. He's never really socializing with anybody else there besides like Spock or one of the other senior officers. Archer, like you said, usually we see him having lunch or dinner with one, maybe two other people, and it's usually T'Pol and Trip. Sometimes we hear that he invites other crew members up there. Cool, so that's a bit more informal. Picard, no, never. Cisco, we don't really see him eating with anybody other than maybe Jadzia in the early seasons, and with Worf later on. Other than that, though, he's pretty solitary on these things.
Cisco was holding things in his quarters occasionally.
Right,
There's 2 or 3 times where he's seen cooking with the staff, or even like when he gets back home and Penny, Josa Captain.
Cassidy
Cassidy is cooking, and he's like, don't nobody touches my peppers.
I'll say that probably excuses him. He's got like a family at home, right? So bringing over like lower crew members is kind of difficult, really, when you've got like a kid and a long-term girlfriend, I guess.
Yeah.
But the one I really want to point out is Voyager. We always think of Captain Janeway as having a real like mama bear kind of mentality towards her crew, right? But if you remember, early on in Voyager, she talks about how she had the captain's dining room that Neelix turned into his pantry, right? That show was designed for the captain to be isolated. The Intrepid class had a separation there for them. And we do see her have many meals with her crew, but I don't think it's ever been quite as jovial or warm as what we saw here with Pike. So this is just like an example of different captain, different atmosphere. We can see this and enjoy it.
Yeah, I attribute it to your host. The host can make all the difference in the atmosphere of your dinner and your get together. And Pike just has that. Him and Cisco, I would say, would be 2 that are similar in regards to the charisma that they have with their crew.
But we never really see Cisco interact with lower crew member either, though. Really. And
neither is
3 unnamed people in his little party. Like, we don't know their names.
Maybe there was a +1 for everyone that. Yeah, I mean.
Maybe, but I don't know.
Who knows?
I want to switch to Spock for 2 seconds and just comment on how cool it is that his hair design, the person who's doing his hair, is pulling it from the cage and not from TOS. His hair has the combed forward look that the cage had versus the very mod squad, bangs.
It's nice bit of continuity.
I want to compliment whoever does the uniform or the clothing for Pike as well. The shirt that he wears during that barbecue looks excellent. He looks great in it. It looks like a possible evolution of like a Henley. Good luck for the guy.
Yeah, it's like a 1/4 zip, long sleeve. Yeah.
Looks great on him. All right, so the next person to talk about is Hemmer, who we're finally getting a little bit of time with. We still haven't gotten much with him. Not much, but we got a little bit. He definitely gives off the whole vibe of hyper-competent, like you said, Dag. Because he manages to rig up ion engines on photon torpedoes in like an hour. That's amazing. But his back and forth with Uhura was great.
He even pulls like the 23rd century equivalent of bold of you to assume it would take me that long. Since I'm the one who will be doing it.
Right, I have to do the work.
Yeah, we haven't
There's
seen an
nothing like saying
Anar,
it's easy when you're the one that's not doing the work.
right? So we haven't seen an Anar on screen since 2004, the last season of, or I guess 2005, the last season of Enterprise, um, in the trilogy that made the Federation happen. The Romulans would have got away with it too if it hadn't been for you kids and your lousy Porthos. But yeah, I think I can't wait to see more of Hemmer. He is played by a legally blind actor, so awesome representation there. Um, it's his, even his, like, the Anar makeup is a really good fusion of contemporary style with the classic design that we've seen previously. You know, he looks fierce, and he immediately gives you the impression of somebody who knows exactly what they're doing, and if you're asking questions, you're wasting time.
True.
Yeah, he definitely has like a brusque personality. I'm hoping that might have been a little bit just for like the bit of hazing for Cadet Uhura, which he seems to imply and she seems to imply too. But yeah, I think that was pretty interesting.
Well, he fits an Andorian character. It's I don't expect him to be jovial like I don't expect him to act like Garrick and be
No.
all
No.
cheerful and joyful and all that. But then again, his depiction of an Andorian is what we've seen from Enterprise. Not so much as argumentative as the Tellarites. You know, not quite that grating, but they tend to take life seriously.
Well, right, but remember the back and forth that she had in Andorian with Hemmer, right? Like,
Yeah.
You're doing this just to haze me. You need to get out more. Seriously. And then she says something to Spock and Vulcan as well, right? And Hemmer's response is not, how disrespectful, or that's one strike against her. No, it's, I like her. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
clearly he's got a sense of humor. He was kind of fucking with her, is my interpretation on this.
Yeah, that was just, I again, the social dynamics are hitting the right vibes out the gate. Ortegas.
So we get to see that Ortegas is as competent as she seems to claim she is. More often than not in Star Trek, when we hear take evasive actions, the ship kind of maybe sways to the left or something a little bit.
It lists to the left.
Yeah, here we got some good maneuvers. We saw that more shots were missing than hitting, but some were still hitting because computer-aided targeting should hit sometimes.
You know,
So
it's not perfect, but it was great. The vibes of the animation that was used to show the Enterprise dodging this incoming fire around this ship, I was getting solid, like, remastered TOS graphic vibes from those, because like the remastered series shows a lot cooler external shots of the Enterprise. So when the Enterprise is like, it starts to list and then it goes for, you know, a corkscrew, and I was like, okay, that's cool, and then it pulled a freaking Maverick. Did you notice that the ship's like and I was like, okay, this is the kind of stuff that I used to do with my micro machines when I was like 15.
Oh hell yeah.
And now I've seen it on TV. Totally.
Well, and
okay, 30.
I'd read some complaints about the handling of the Enterprise in that scene, and it's not a Galaxy class bus. It's a smaller ship. It's more nimble. It's got RCS thrusters lined up around the saucer. It's got these powerful impulse engines, and it's not huge. So yeah, it should be able to move exactly like how it did, which I thought was awesome.
I don't want it moving like a starfighter, right? Like, which was some of the problems in video games, right? Like, if you look at Starfleet Academy or Klingon Academy, every ship kind of like spins and turns like a starfighter. Unrealistic. I think the way they moved here was great. The thing I wanted to comment visually, though, about this was I liked how the weapons looked. Like Dad was saying, right? They look like the remaster. The phasers look good. They don't look like Discovery phasers. They don't have like a pulse, nothing. They look solid. Big fan there. And Ortegas as like the character that's like piloting during this and giving ideas with weapons also makes sense, right? She's tactically minded and she's got a good head on her shoulders for this stuff.
I need to go through all of Memory Alpha's like navigation schemes to see if anybody in the past has ever like written an Ortegas maneuver in the history of Star Trek, just to see, like, yep, it's now we know who that's named after. Here's the original.
That'd be such a good Easter egg. I don't know. That'd be
I
so
feel
good,
like it's
though.
got to be. I feel like it would have to be in Voyager, if anything, because Paris was always initiating odd, maneuvers. One thing I want to say about Ortega's like appearance, though, I'm getting solid like aliens, colonial, marine vibes.
Yeah.
You liked her
yeah.
leather outfit?
From her. From what?
The leather outfit she had on when she was at the dinner?
When she was at the dinner, when she was just standing like outside the elevator, the turbo lift. God, what's wrong with me?
She's the leather jacket she's got on looks great.
She's got leather jacket, midriff shirt, and then what appears to be like relaxed cargo sweats. I don't really know. I'm not a costumer. Cal's not here to help me with this right now. But her vibe is just so utilitarian and forward, and I dig it. I want to see her on an away mission with a phaser rifle, and it's got to be one of the classic Cage phaser rifles. Give me the weird retro laser array. Upgrade it a little bit, but make it amazing. And then if we're talking about clothing.
Yeah, no, I think that Ortegas' use in this episode was very good too, right? We haven't seen like the crack hotshot pilot come in this variety before. Detmer, I don't think has ever had as much personality as Ortegas has had in just these 2 episodes. So it's good that we're getting like a likable character that's doing these badass things too.
Not to say Detmer's not likable.
No,
Discovery's just a different show.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had any focus on Ortegas yet either, but we've never had much focus on Detmer and much more.
On a side note, Detmer is getting a focus in the IDW comics right now, and it's glorious. But I want to talk about Uhura's dress uniform here, because I feel like this is a riff on an STO uniform. Renzo would know better than I would, but the way that the shoulder comes across the top and the style of the yoke, it feels very solidly like an STO variant. What do you say, Renzo?
I think you're right. So it even has the pattern that they use in STO for what are called the Jupiter uniforms, where it's like a little hexagon pattern. It's my favorite look in the game. They are definitely getting some inspirations from the games and what they're using in the shows, and I say more power to them. Right? Take what you love, use it here, make it canon for us. We'll all love it.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you a question at the end of this that has to do with season 3 of Picard and what I sent you on Discord. But we'll go into that then.
So our next one is Sam Kirk, because we finally get a little bit of interaction with him, right? So to start,
talking about Guy.
Yes, the mustache scene was amazing. The mustache is growing on me. Loved it. I cracked up when Pike said it the first time.
Gotta get out of here before someone kills Guy.
When he fell down, when he got zapped and fell down, I was like, yeah, you better get used to that position. That's how we see him in TOS. He's just William Shatner with a mustache.
And the hair's
a little grayer. Yeah,
right.
A little bit older, but yeah, I'm digging it. I want to see where they go with him, and I like that they're acknowledging this. I like that they're just telling the fans, yep, we get it. It's hilarious. We're moving on.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I mean, the character is very likable too, right? Like in his early interactions with Uhura, he was showing like compassion and care that Uhura was not receiving from La'an or Spock, and then he's the one to get taken out by the egg thing. So interesting choice that it isolates Uhura as a character with 2 people who don't share compassion at all.
It's a really clever writing tool right there, is to be like, here's the person that's sympathizing with the main character for this segment, and they're taken out. And now not only does Uhura need to have to communicate with this asteroid, meteorite, whatever, to save the day, but she also has to find a way to communicate with La'an, who's super security minded, and Spock, who is thinking the utility of logic. I really like that as a narrative choice there.
Yeah, I think that it makes sense as well to give the character like a real challenge. So yeah, I agree. All right, so let's go to, unless you guys have anything else about any of the characters that you want to bring up.
Nope.
Cool. All right, so on to the main story itself. So first, I want to talk about music as a language, or music as a means of communications. I love this idea, and it's not original here. We've seen this a few other times in Star Trek. We've seen it many times in science fiction, and I think that using it here was pretty appropriate. What do you guys think?
I dug it, and it reminded me of my very first encounter in living memory, in my memory, of
Mhm.
when this was used as a because Spock says that like Vulcans believe that music or at least sound is a fundamental property of the universe, which is why it's so appealing to so many species. And I'm like, I love that because it rings the bells of one of the worst movies of all time, Masters of the Universe, with Dolph Lundgren, Courtney Cox,
What?
and our very
You
own
bite your tongue.
Robert Duncan McNeil. Um, okay, I say worst, but I love it. I have it on DVD. It's great.
Okay.
But it's one of those movies that's like, oh god, this is so bad. I can't stop watching it. But in that movie, there's a device called the Cosmic Key, and it's created by Gwildor, who is this universe's analogy to Orko, because they couldn't create a flying thing in the 80s.
Right.
And they explain what it is, and he's like, you see, Kevin, the universe is music, and then he goes on to explain it, but it gets muted out by something that's happening otherwise, but the conversation is there, and you just get the impression that they're like, he's figured out how to tap into universal properties by keying the right notes in the right pattern. So that was really cool.
I think it's fascinating to show that there are different means of communication different species could use. It's not just the way we talk. It's not always words and letters and so forth. For example, you're using the music as language. There's another one, and this was something. This was a movie I watched recently. It's from 2016. It's called Arrival, with Amy Adams and Jeremy Renner. Amy Adams was Lois Lane in Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman and Justice League, and Jeremy Renner, of course, Hawkeye in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And basically, there's this encounter. Aliens arrive on Earth, and the large bulk of the movie is trying to figure out how to communicate with them. And the way that these aliens communicate is these like round symbols that have all this like stuff around it. It's hard to describe. You got to see it. But essentially, it's like a ring.
The ring around your coffee cup after you spill it.
Yeah. And they finally were able to determine that like that's their way of a sentence. Like where we would have all these different words in a sentence, they do it with their hand, and this ring was the phrase. I like that. I like the music as a language, and I think that this was very interesting to see that things that you wouldn't think would be a means of communicating, but there are a lot, and music is probably one of the best ones in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we have languages on Earth that require essentially tones and music to explain meaning, right? Like
Yeah.
Mandarin requires specific tonal patterns for words to be said, and that changes their meaning. This is just the next step after that. This is using the tone as the meaning rather than just the tone clarifying the meaning. So yeah, it's really cool. I think that it's another example of Star Trek using a clever communications problem to justify like a plot. Same thing that we saw with 10C in the last season of Discovery, right? Like their method of communication was just not compatible with what we had seen or known. So yeah, I think that this worked out really well for the show.
So, question to you: you said it's happened a couple of times in Star Trek. You want to name a few times?
So there's one episode in Enterprise where Hoshi talks about how their language is musical. It doesn't really end up blocking their communications for very long, but that's one, and that's the one in particular I can think of because I just watched it like a couple weeks ago.
There's also the Voyager one with Jonathan Del Arco guest starring as the musical tone speaking in the dark, that the Doctor teaches them how to speak, and they speak in tones. And let's not forget probably the most famous instance in Star Trek, the whales singing to the whale probe.
Yeah.
That's a good point too. That is a good point.
Which makes me wonder, the whale probe, giant cosmic ecological harvesting destructive force moved away by music, versus asteroid, giant cosmological devastating force moved away by music. Any connection?
Time travel is the connection. Remember, the Voyage Home is an episode or a movie that centers around time travel. This one is an asteroid that can somehow predict the future. right? Like we've got some timey-wimey bullshit in both of these.
And of course, Uhura wouldn't remember in the voyage home because she lost her memory to Nomad about a decade later.
Oh yeah. I I think you're gonna unravel a bad spider's web. It's like a when you pick up a big ball of network cable, like how the hell did this happen? You're trying to untangle everything. Yeah, that's what we could slide into here with
Star
Star Trek.
Trek's canon is a loose ball of yarn, right? Like you can
Nothing.
pull on some threads a little.
Well, I don't. I would like to suggest that my connection is tenuous at the very best of things,
Mhm.
but I cannot ignore the similarities in how that was cool. I only wish that it hadn't have been Spock's maneuver that pushed it away, but more Uhura singing. I think it would have been cool to have Uhura's feature move into the third act.
Yeah. All right, so our next point, and I suspect we'll get a Big J's beef out of this one, is about the Prime Directive and the people of Deleb, or the Deleb people. I thought that the Prime Directive's use or bending here was well within what we've seen for other episodes in TOS and such, so it didn't really bug me much. Picard being a much more tight-fisted, like strict person on interpreting the Prime Directive probably wouldn't have saved the people of Deleb. He probably would have just let it happen. But I think that's kind of well within like the bounds of a captain of a starship.
Well, but in the previous episode, that whole snafu that happened with the I can't remember the name of the alien race, but basically,
Kylie.
right? They just totally blew the lid on uh, the Starfleet, the ship. Basically, the biggest nightmare you could imagine with the Prime Directive, but they didn't have it yet. And
They had General Order 1. It was the same thing.
Well, yeah, but you remember when Pike was in the office with April, he said that basically, I'm paraphrasing, this event is the catalyst to the Federation Council to come up with something like the directive, Prime Directive, and of course Pike was like, that'll never stick.
I think he meant the name.
Yeah,
Well,
they're still going to call it General Order 1 because they do through TOS.
Yeah,
right.
It's just the name he's talking about. It's not going to stick. The actual order is going to be around, but yeah.
So
it is interesting.
I think in this one, and here's my thought on the Prime Directive. I think that what they did here some may say that they they broke the Prime Directive, but an asteroid hitting this planet can be argued that, well, that's not the natural course of this world and of the evolution. However, they did affect that by having part of the asteroid skim off the outside layer of the planet and causing all this rain and changing the whole landscape of their ecosystem. And the thing that I'm not a big fan of with the Prime Directive is if you're looking at a event that could wipe out an entire planet or species, yeah, you should do something there, because I'm not a big fan of, well, they're toast. It's natural for their planet to explode because there's going to be an earthquake. Yeah, we could stop it, but we have to watch it happen. It just doesn't.
This is the fundamental argument of the Prime Directive, right? I think that you got the right loophole for how they justify this, right? Mahanid is not a natural occurrence. Mahanid is something different, right? So it's not part of the natural course of evolution for this planet, anyways. So we justified that as our rationale for moving it. They didn't know that at the time when they first launched those ion engine photon torpedoes, but still, it's fine. They've got their loophole for why they wanted to move this thing. As for the rationality of the Prime Directive, the argument goes both ways, though, Big J. What if this people or whatever people you save from the earthquake that shatters their planet, right, would have become a race of Hitlers, right? But this asteroid is what prevents them from wiping out half the galaxy. You got to let things go their own way is the idea behind the Prime Directive. It's not really a philosophical argument that anybody can win. It's just, you don't know.
You're right, you can't. And it was the same argument that Picard had with Berlinghoff Rasmussen. when Picard was just stuck on if this plan they had to save the planet of the week would work or not, and tried to elicit advice from him because at the time thought he was from the future, but we know how that ended. He wasn't. And
Charlatan.
yes, and that argument comes up a lot in that if you allow X to happen, what if now you've created the next Hitler or the next Khan Singh? Which I get that, but what if saving something gets you the next Surak
Master
or
Spock.
Sure.
Ambassador Spock, something like that. So you're right. It can be a very muddy conversation there.
That's exactly
because
it's money.
you don't want to, right, because you're in a position now when you're that technologically advanced. I'm talking about Starfleet and the Federation. You can start playing God, and I get that. I get the trepidation you have to have where you come off as playing God, because we'll look at Star Trek Into Darkness in the Kelvin timeline. Perfect example in the beginning of that movie. All it took was a suitcase of some like ice cooler in
Cold
a volcano.
fusion device.
Yeah, cold fusion device to keep that volcano from destroying all the indigenous life. So when you're walking around with technology like that, you're right. You can cause a lot of harm, a lot of damage. You could save a planet that in 100 or so years is the Dominion, and lay waste to start a war and whatnot. But it's not always a negative
just
thing.
As seriously, right? Like,
yeah.
Let's say you save a species, the Valakians. Let's just give them a name, for example, right, on a planet, because they are going to get wiped out by like a plague or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got the tech to save them. You can save them. You give them the thing that cures them. You move along your merry way, right? Yep. Well, what you didn't know was the Valakians were going to go extinct, but the other species on the planet, the Menk, were going to evolve when the Valakians were out of the way, and so the Menk would have taken over, and the Menk would have gotten smarter, and the Menk would have created a utopia for their people on the planet, right? Yeah. By modifying things with your technology, you change the natural order of that planet, and could be for the better, could be for the worse, but it's not really your place to decide. That is the argument of the Prime Directive. So I literally just gave you an Enterprise episode about Valakis and Menk, but there's another episode that I just watched in Enterprise Season 4 that is all about this too. It's called Observer Effect.
Yes.
It's about a pair of Organians watching as a silicon virus almost kills, or actually does kill, Hoshi and Trip, right? And their discussions back and forth about like, ours is not to interfere, we're just here to observe, is exactly the kind of conversation we're having here. And sometimes, yeah, it's best just to interfere, especially if things aren't going the normal way. But sometimes you gotta let nature take its course, right?
What do you think the argument was, or think of this scenario, that there is an advanced intelligent species that had the opportunity to divert the asteroid that was going to hit Earth, cause the indigenous life at the time to go extinct? Well, should we let that just happen because that's the natural course? Or no, we don't really have a rule about that, so we want to save the planet. Let's divert this thing from happening. Now suddenly, you know what I mean?
Sure. They divert the asteroid, or they don't divert the asteroid, and then humans never exist because that asteroid wiped out the dinosaurs and mammals evolved, right? Like, sometimes an asteroid is necessary, and you can't really predict the future, so better to just let things take their own route. I get it. And we see this in TOS too, with For the World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky. They tried to redirect the asteroid in it, right? Like, it's...
This is where I want to step in with, haven't you people even heard of time travel? In this episode specifically, let's talk about predestination now. I know it's near the end or whatever.
But we can't use time travel as a crutch.
We can't use time travel as a crutch, but what we can do is we can talk about, if the future was already predicted, do you have a choice?
Yes, you have a choice. Yes, you have a choice.
It's the Dr. Manhattan effect. For those of you who may not be familiar with Dr. Manhattan, he's a character in The Watchmen who exists in all points in his existence at the same time. He can have a conversation with somebody in the future that he's speaking with, and a conversation with someone in the past that he's speaking with at the same time, and relay thoughts and words from those two people at the same time, even though one of those people might be dead between those two periods of time. So Dr. Manhattan's existence is locked in. He can see the future. He knows what he's going to do. He knows that he doesn't deviate from it, so he cannot deviate from it. He is locked into his existence. And for those kinds of situations where you have we know it, learned at the end of this episode, this was all foretold. Somehow, don't need to talk about the mechanism, just that as soon as this episode started and they became aware of this asteroid, they were locked into their choices. It doesn't matter whether or not the Prime Directive applied or not. If they had chosen another way, they would have, and that would have been part of this message.
Yeah, hard to say, right? Like, predestination paradox is hard to prove, hard to spot, hard to know when they're real or when they're just like bullshit, essentially. Because they can be self-fulfilling prophecies. Right? If you tell people that the only way that this thing is going to go is that you will do this thing, and you believe that that's the true story, you'll do it and then prove the prediction true, right?
This First Contact and Assignment Earth in a bundle right there.
This, on the other hand, is a little bit harder because it was saying you're going to do this before they did it. That was just only after it happened that they managed to translate it, right? So whatever Mahanit is definitely seems to have some sort of like temporal foreknowledge, and I don't know why. I don't really care. Hopefully we never see this again. It's kind of weird, but
I don't think we will, and that's what I like about this series. Is it's the A plot is that plot of the week. There's this thing, we have to do the thing, we've got to fix the thing, and then move on to the next one. Whereas the serialized part is the B plot. You reverse that for Discovery and Picard, where the serialized thing is the main thing that happens. There's really hardly ever a B part of it. Yes, Dag.
I'm just thinking, just to pull a trope out of my butt to say maybe this makes sense more, but this asteroid could be living in anti-time. What we're living through in the future is its past as it's moving into its future, into our past, which is why it is aware of what will happen. So it's not bringing life to New Worlds, it's actually taking it away over time in its perspective.
So I do want to point out that, right, the whole idea of a comet that spreads life essentially this way, super relevant to real world, right? The way that Earth's oceans formed is literally from comets and cometary dust and asteroids falling into Earth over tens of millions of years.
Thank you.
Right? Yeah. Like, that's actually how it happened. So that part's totally reasonable. The idea of this whole like massive chunk of ice cracking off the side and falling into the upper atmosphere and changing the weather all at once, a little bit more ridiculous, but I don't care. I can totally swallow it. That's not that big a deal. But I love the fact that they're pointing out that comets are necessary for like many planetary processes like this. It's a really good catch. We actually see a little bit of it in Voyager. Remember in Year of Hell when they talk about like wiping out one comet or something that changed the way Voyager's course was because they wanted to study it, but wiping out that one comet prevented 800 civilizations from existing or something.
Yeah, something like that. I do like that, and that leads me to another like possible conclusion that this could be a leftover from either the preservers or the progenitor race from the chase.
I'm down with the preservers idea, right? Because we know that they had an idea about like using asteroids, and we know that the progenitors from the chase did too, because they hid some of their evidence on asteroids as well. I guess these both work for me. The idea of like spreading and seeding life definitely is what the progenitor species did. So yeah, both these work for me.
Cool. What's next?
All right.
So the next bit is, I wanted to mention that I thought that the idea of using ion engines to shove Mahanit out of the way was brilliant, because we also remember that Yanada used ion engines in just a few years later in TOS. So cool little reference to itself there, which was another self-directing asteroid. So cool. And then the Shepherds. What did you guys think of the Shepherds as a whole?
So looking at the Shepherds this way, what I saw first, and this is a weird fusion of something, but it's like E.T. and a Navi from Avatar and the big Colonel guy from The Fifth Element, like combined into one person.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
what I saw here. The big Colonel guy with like the bleach blonde hair and the goatee.
Yes.
That's what I was getting the vibe of
Yes.
here.
One of the guys that, yeah, I know that face, but don't know his name. He's in everything.
Obviously, this episode really dragged the narrator or the viewer along with, you know, I had this impression the whole time. I was like, we're Starfleet, we're always right. Here's a bully species, ha ha ha. That's the narrative. And the end flips it. It's like, no, we should have trusted them because they've been escorting this thing for millions of years, for memory immemorial. We should have trusted them the whole time.
Oh, you and I took different things away from this episode then, sir.
Okay. I mean, yes, they may have formed a passionate zealotry around this figure, but again, they've been following it. They've dedicated their whole lives to following it and seeing what it can do and watching how it reacts to things. And when they say things like, if Mahanit wants to spare the planet, it'll move by itself because it's documented for them. They know what it can do.
So I grant all of that, right? But
Spill it.
it wouldn't have happened the way Mahanit was predicting unless the Federation and Starfleet and Spock had interfered the way that the Shepherds were literally telling them not to, right? So the lesson I get out of this whole interaction between Pike and the religious zealots was pay attention to the religious zealots. Maybe they've got something to teach you, but don't let them influence what you think is right, because chances are they're not, right?
And there was one more tiny bit at the end of there, which was like, there's maybe a continuity gaffe. If the Shepherds have been following it this whole time, there's got to be other encounters where other races were like, no, we're going to deflect this comet, screw you. And they did, and the comet maybe moved itself. So how come it's never been recorded before in time immemorial? That's just one of the little things that I have. They should have just been like, oh, look, another ship. Let's see what Mahanit does.
Let's see what happens this time.
Let's see what Mahanit does this time. We don't need to get involved. If we get involved, we're challenging Mahanit, right?
Well,
so, maybe
it's a large galaxy. It's very large. They very well had not encountered any species or any organization like the Federation until now. That's I don't think that's outside of the realm of possibility for sure.
It's an interesting first contact that wasn't really regarded as a first contact.
Right.
But again, now here we talk about being locked into, you know, things being preordained, so to speak. None of this would have happened the way it had if the precursing events hadn't happened exactly as they did.
What?
They had to get involved in order for Pike to be like deceptive and launch Spock in a shuttle to do what Spock did.
Like
if they had been if they had been friendly, let's run through the possibilities here. The Enterprise detects it and says, nah, never mind. It doesn't happen. The Enterprise detects it. These guys show up and say, go away, mind your own business. The Enterprise says, okay, it doesn't happen. The only way this works is if they intervene, Pike's deception occurs, and we get Mahanit moving itself as a result and seeding this planet with a giant ocean from the sky. And those poor people in the dunes, I have no idea if they're going to be flooded inside of a week or what, but...
Think about the number of species that are going to go extinct as a result of the flooding and the rain that nothing on that planet has evolved to withstand.
And we're all over here.
For all we know, water could have been toxic to these people.
Whoops.
We're over, and if this had been like Galaxy Quest or the Orville, you know for a fact as soon as it started raining, they would have started going, and just like just steaming and spoiling away. And the captain would have been like, another day saved. These people are going to have water and agriculture in 1,000 years. Dun, dun, dun.
They massacred everyone.
And maybe that's just a little too colonialist to think.
Right, because they didn't...
Did I? Ah, crap.
That the prime directive is what it is that you don't know if these life forms are based on say not carbon based, maybe silicon.
They could have been Wicked
And
Witch based.
yeah, water could have just completely been like acid rain to them. So you're right, you might think that you're doing something good, but no, you completely fucked it all up. And so that's why we have rules.
And that's
Yeah, and we see that in Enterprise as well. They literally show us an Enterprise episode where they think that they're just approaching a planet and they light its atmosphere on fire. Granted, it turns out it wasn't their fault. Actually, it was the Suliban that caused it. But the whole, like, you can accidentally wipe out a civilization without even trying. It makes more sense than not get involved.
Yep.
This feels a lot like a Landrew episode, though, where they're like, we just dropped a kegger of ice on these people. We're outie. And, like, Landrew happens again.
Yeah.
Let's move forward.
Let's go to the visuals now, right? So visuals, audios, anything that shows up in that sense. The first one I want to talk about is I thought that the Shepherd ship was really, really cool looking, but it doesn't look advanced to me at all. In fact, it looks like something you'd think. No, not at all. It looks like something you'd see in The Expanse, which looks cool. Love it, but it doesn't look advanced.
So this ship looks like a fusion of the enemy ship from Galaxy Quest and the original ring ship design for the Enterprise from 1966.
Yes.
It's got this very mechanical, angular, evil aspect to it. The colors are lit in such a way to give it, several eyes of Sauron orbiting it. But it does have that quintessential ring ship design, the outer rings, the inner hull. It's like DS9 had a baby and it was a dreidel.
I thought you were going to say, and it's a dreadnought, because I would have agreed then.
Well, I got the impression...
A dreadnought?
Dreadnought.
Oh, okay.
I got the impression that it was advanced enough that the Enterprise definitely did not want to start a fight if they didn't have to. That was the tactical assessment.
No, that's what they said in the episode, for sure. It just... All I'm saying is, from an appearance standpoint, it's got to be a generational ship if they've been following Mahanit and these other asteroids or comets along for generations or centuries. Cool. So it's been around for forever. It looks like it's pretty beat up. It looks like it's been around forever. It looks old. Cool. Yeah. It even has rotating sections like gravity style. Just doesn't look that advanced to me. I would have expected a little bit more, I don't know, pizzazz. They've been following this thing for 1 million years, but 1,000 years in the future, Starfleet ships have detached nacelles and everything, right? Like, they have been real static for the last 10,000 years or whatever they've been following Mahanit.
Well, but I mean, yeah. Where are they going to stop to get upgrades or...
Who is this ship hiding?
So the Varro generational ship in Voyager, right, was consistently growing, and they'd only been doing that for like 200 years, right? And their ship was tens of miles long and had pods that eventually could all break off and go wherever, right? Point was, they built that ship as they traveled, right? These guys are doing the same thing, and yet they're following something a lot slower, a comet. They have plenty of opportunities to grow and develop that ship if they want to. I don't know why it's just so junky.
Well, I think it's the mission. The mission profile is different, and your Voyager example, that was just like that. That was what they did. In this, they're just the only thing they have to do is follow the asteroid, and that's all they're doing. There's no need or desire really, or any impetus to change the ship or add to it, because just here we are. Just the engine starts, it goes from point A to point B. Don't need to fix it. It's not broken.
One of these days, they'll bump into a race that's able to actually take them up on a fight, and they'll get fucking wrecked because they're not developing.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't doubt it, but when it happens, just like it's been foretold.
Foretold in my ass. Okay. The next bit I wanted to talk about, unless you've got something else, Dak.
No, all day.
No, okay. The next bit I want to talk about was I really liked the use of shields to emit heat. It makes sense. If shields can withstand energy, and we know that they can withstand even being close to a sun's corona in TNG, they should be able to put out energy just as easily. I liked it. And sublimating ice, definitely straightforward as hell. It's going to cause things to break off, and that's going to change the shape of it, and that's going to change its path. I like that a lot. That was good.
I liked that as well. It was a very obvious. I don't know if it's a retcon, but it's a very obvious. Yeah, this stuff can do that. I also really appreciate the still classical design of the shuttle. I know we did that last episode, but this episode I'm still just like, yay! It still looks like a Galileo. It's huge on the inside. It's way bigger than a set that could have afforded the 1960s Galileo, and I'm totally okay with that. It definitely feels much more like a runabout than a shuttlecraft, but that's fine. It's a pretty ship.
Plus, it's fine.
Heat emitting shields, definitely a cool new ability that should have been there all along.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Now, how many other
tell
times?
Us your beef.
Yeah.
No. He's making the face. He's got beef.
I'm making the beef face. Yeah.
Sir, this is a Wendy's. Where's the beef?
You're right. You called it. This is what I have beef with. It's Big J's beef. I'm not a big. I'm not a fan of taking technology and just changing the behavior of it, the established behavior of it, just to match what's needed to happen in the plot of the episode.
They reversed the shield polarity. They turned on the muon scrambler. They do this in Voyager every episode. This is technobabble at its peak.
I know, but the thing is, it aggravates me the same way that the navigational deflector dish was somehow designed and created and built with the ability to do all of these things that nobody could have ever anticipated it would need to do, and it does it. I'm calling bullshit on that. Same with these heat emitting shields. Really? Seriously? No, I'm not buying it. Don't like it. I think that they could have made, there are other ways that they could have done the thing. I know there's a shuttle. There needs to be some element of heat. I get that. The fact that they made it the shields, stupid. They could have made it the engines. I'm sure the thrusters, the warp nacelles, something that already generates heat and is passable that it would. Don't suddenly take the shields and say, oh, okay, well now the shields can emit heat. Nope, I got beef with that. You can't just suddenly cram down our throats something that this has never. Now I get the whole, well, you can't say that it's never been done before and they can't do it now because it didn't happen in any other episode of Trek. I get that whole conundrum, but it makes no sense that they used the shields for that. That's what I have a problem with.
You were saying you liked the whole idea of having a suitcase that had cold fusion that stopped the volcano from erupting. That is way more of an ass pull than using shields to emit radiation, which is what heat is.
Especially since cold fusion does not do anything close to what it was depicted in that movie. Cold fusion is just energy creation. You can't turn a whole fucking volcano into ice with a cold fusion device.
But it's cold. It's fusion. No, that's different.
That hurts so much.
I
hated that bit of it. I didn't like In the Darkness, but that part was really.
But that's different, though. That whole thing was created and used and purposed for that particular mission. The shields on starships don't generate heat.
Modify something to do it.
To generate heat from the shields? No.
Yeah, they modified something in the shields.
Why? They could have had the heat coming off something that's already generating heat.
Because the shields have more surface. The shields have more surface area than anything else on the ship. The shields are bigger than the ship. It's a big bubble around the ship. More
but
surface
the shields
area
are there
more
to.
Heat can be emitted.
Guys, do you know what this sounds like? This sounds like conspiracy talk. Like the next thing I expect to hear is shields can't melt steel beams.
Oh.
If they can melt the ice off that planet, they certainly can melt steel beams.
I don't know. I'm just. Here's the thing, though. Shields have always been meant to absorb and deflect incoming
energy. Did you say energy? Are you gonna say energy?
Energy, radiation, phasers, it's there to bring in and absorb and deflect, not to put output of heat.
So you don't think that they ever radiate heat behind them if they're taking fire in the front or anything?
I can't.
Maybe that's part of the word deflecting.
Well, but okay, let's say that that's happening. You're right, that's deflecting. We're talking about emitting heat itself, not from any outside
just
force.
Radiation.
I hear you saying. I don't like it. I don't think I can buy this one.
Well, fortunately, it's not for sale. It's free.
I know. Yeah, I know. I
All right.
I
So
wasn't
this
a
has
big
been
fan
more
of
into
that.
this.
It was a lot. It was a lot to try to swallow. The whole. I wasn't a big fan of that. The heat emitting shields.
This has been another episode of Big J's Beef, followed by Renzo's Rebuke. In the audience, if you have any feedback for us, if there's ever been an episode of Star Trek that has made you go concretely, yes, there's no way shields can emit heat, or, oh my God, Jay, have you forgotten these 5 episodes where they actually literally do that? Post it in the comments. Hit us up on Twitter at Beyond Trek Pod. Fight me at Twitter on Trek Nexus. We're not done yet. I'm just doing this voice for fun.
So going into our last major segment bit, we get our first Star Trek New Worlds, our Strange New Worlds ship battle.
Yes.
It was pretty low stakes. It wasn't all that big, but it was very well depicted. I quite liked it. I think it shows off a good way of showing a space battle where you're following a singular ship through a narrative with its movements. I think they did a really good job with that. What do you guys think?
I loved it. I thought it was great, and I hope that I hope we get space battles that are like this, and it was handled well, because you're right, you don't want these starships to handle like X-wing fighters. You don't want them to move around like that, but they also don't have to lumber around like it's one of those double-decker London buses. You know, they can have some move and some handle to them. And I like watching this battle. It's nice to see that a ship can dodge phasers or torpedoes coming at them, something like that. So yeah, A+. I like that space battle.
So one of the things that I read a lot of comments about was, why do ships ever miss in Star Trek? Don't they have computer targeting? Can't they just aim their shots with their computer systems that are so smart and with their sensors that are so accurate at distance? Yes, I'm sure they could if there was no such thing as electronic countermeasures, which we know exists in Star Trek. If you're
Correct.
jamming, that also interferes with where a sensor is going to register you or where something's going to target. So there's probably a great ECM suite on that Enterprise, and Ortegas is dipping and dodging too.
I have even a more simpler answer for that. Raising shields at red alert defaults that system. You're in a
For sure.
attack. You're in an attack posture. You are ready to receive damage. We're not going to wait for you to activate the secondary system. We're tying it directly into the shields.
Absolutely, agreed entirely. I wouldn't expect it to be a separate thing.
Yeah,
Just built-in part of red alert.
totally part of a tactical suite that would be activated at the push of a button.
Okay, so I see what you're saying there, Renzo. Let's say that, okay, I'm a computer, and I've got a rifle with a scope. You're standing there, and I pull the trigger, shoots perfectly. Now, after I've pulled that trigger, my job is done. Aiming is done. All that's finished. You can move to the right or to the left so that that shot misses. That was not any kind of non-functionality or issue on my end. It was just that you moved.
To explain,
Like the Enterprise was moved out of the way.
You can lead a shot though, right? Like if you know that a ship is moving to the left and you know it's moving at this rate, the computer should target ahead of where it is now and where the shot will be where the ship will be when your shot impacts, right?
Unless it got Ortegas flying.
Exactly. Alternatively, right? Let's say that scope your computer is looking through, right, gets a laser beam shined in it, or gets like junk lights shining into it, right? So that it can't really tell where everything is. That's ECM essentially.
Yeah.
So it can't judge where to shoot properly, and so it targets the wrong place, right? That's the kind of concept. You can still fix these things with better computers, right? Like this computer knows that, oh, a red dot, ignore the red dot. The red dot's clearly bad, right? Same kind of concept that we have in modern day missiles that we use in actual warfare, right? Flares and chaff, flares for heat-seeking missiles and chaff for radar-seeking missiles, both of which just create essentially noise or distractions for the systems on the missile, and they've got pretty good batting average for saving what they're being shot at. So
it would be really interesting to get deeper into the technicalities of this, because we are talking about a weapon. Phasers are just energy. They're just like a form of plasma.
rapid nadions.
Right, plasma. For all intents and purposes, it's a form of energy that is self-sustaining to a point and then evaporates. Like a phaser blast fired does not continue indefinitely until it hits something. It's a coherent phased beam that relies on its own electromagnetic energy to carry itself a short distance and then disperse, hopefully, on your target. It doesn't just, unless it evaporates. So it's energy interacting with the shields, which are also energy, interacting with whatever's going on with that deflector field.
Unless you're Remick and that phaser hits you in the head and your head goes pop.
Remick didn't have ECNs on his face. If he
bet he
had,
wish he
he'd
did.
be fine. Yeah. His last thought, the second to last thing to go through his head before that phaser was, gee, I wish I had a deflector dish on my nose. There's a whole Christmas song for that. But, the interaction between the phased energy and the shields and the deflector energy, with all of these, I'm going to say, invisible to the light scope, the light spectrum effects happening, you could conceivably attract phaser fire to a more sturdy part of your ship by, polarizing a shield segment.
Like a honeypot.
I don't know what that means.
Yes, I get what you're getting at. It's fine.
Dag, honeypot, let me think of a good example. We use this a lot in computer and network terminology. Hackers are always trying to hack into your network, your stuff. What you do is you put a computer that is a computer server that's basically the one that you let be attacked and infiltrated.
To preserve everything else.
Because it draws the heat off of everybody else.
It draws the heat off so that you give a successful target of attack that is not your important stuff. So that way you divert it to that. So that would be like,
so what makes it a
basically
honeypot
decoy.
though, what makes it a honeypot specifically though, is when you have something on that box that they don't realize actually makes them more vulnerable, right? So by taking over this server that you've put out there that's a little bit weaker than everybody else, you somehow get access to their thing, right? So that's the kind of idea. I'm sure that there are digital honeypot type of things in space combat in Star Trek. It's all computerized at that point. There's no officer that can keep up with the systems trying to hack each other sort of thing. So it just kind of goes on in the background. Though I'd love if we had a cybersecurity like character on a Starfleet ship whose whole job was like, they're trying to hack us. Hold on, let me fight them back kind of thing. That'd be great. I'd love that. But that's just me.
Yeah, that would have been really helpful on episode 1 of Picard.
Yeah.
Well, it sure as hell would have. Yeah.
The Borg are trying to hack us. I'm giving it
encryption code.
Yeah. Where was the IT guy on the ship?
Oh, he died in 2379. Didn't you hear?
Oh, yeah.
No, he was outsourced. They no longer work out of Starfleet.
Hi, you've dialed Cybersecurity Starfleet, Daystrom Institute Earth. My name is B4. I'm currently deconstructed in a box here because androids are illegal. But hey, you have a nice day. I'll get you back after the memo.
Click.
I mean, it's that or Agnes is the one who has to do your cybersecurity.
If Agnes is the one, wait, she can counter up because
Agamos.
she's. Oh, I don't know who Agamos is.
The evil computer voiced by Shran's voice actor.
Jeffrey Combs.
Yes, the Jeff Combs evil computer.
The next Star Trek needs to be Star Trek Combs, and it's just everybody. It's just Jeffrey Combs playing everybody in different makeup. Different makeup everywhere.
All right. Any last comments? Any other things you guys want to know? I thought that the music score in this episode was really good too, and the use of music was kind of really reinforcing the tones, so that was nice. But other than that, I didn't have anything else.
I really dug. I really dug, again, sort of the teamwork aspect of things. Like, Spock recognized that the tones were resonating, and then Uhura started playing with that, and that's what led to the discovery that this is what's happening here. Another interesting thing here is, and I don't know if this is just me or if it was intentional, but there used to be an old TV show. I think it was called like Swinging on a Star or something like that, where there was a kid who had special time-stopping powers that her dad had given to her at birth, and he was an alien out in space, and she had a little device that she could talk to him through. And
this one. I had
the,
a lot of
the,
stuff.
the first thing that Uhura hums sounds to me like the beginning of the soundtrack for that show.
Who's
The little device that she uses to talk to her dad looks very much like the egg at the center of the cavern here. I can't remember the name of the show though.
Remember who was in it or what network it was on?
No, I was like 7.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, this was like mid to late 80s. It's called Out of This World, ran from 1987 to 1991.
Never heard of it.
The main character's name is Evie, and she can pause and unpause time. So
Out of This
just
World?
Three little things there that sort of track with each other is the song, the egg at the center, and then the timey-wimey stuff at the end. So yeah, that's just my little observation there. I don't know if anybody else would make that observation besides me, because I'm obsessed with time travel.
I know
Well,
you like that time travel.
I'm glad you managed to find some connection to something else from like your deep dark memories of your childhood.
I don't know where it came from.
I have not. I can't believe you got one by me. Like, I thought I'd seen or heard of everything. This is
well, your homework is good. By next week, I'll have expected you to see the entire series.
All 96 episodes.
Let's go, Jay.
Good God.
96. That's as many episodes as Quantum Leap, which they're rebooting.
Oh, Scott Bale was in an episode.
Yeah, they're rebooting it with Ernie Hudson, who plays Magic, which is the guy Sam leapt into in 1967 in Vietnam to save his brother.
Interesting choice. I don't know if I like them rebooting it. The continuation, I think, would be better.
So hold up. It is a loose continuation because they still reference that like Sam disappeared 30 years ago.
Oh, okay. All right.
But according to the last source I read, and this is not the Beyond Quantum Leap podcast, but the last source I read said that because Scott Bakula is busy filming other stuff right now, he's leading a pilot for next season in another franchise, that he currently has no involvement with this show.
Yet.
Yeah. Now, here's a question to you guys. I know we're not the Beyond Quantum Leap podcast again, but at the end of Quantum Leap, it said Dr. Sam Beckett never returned home. Do you think this new series should undo that? Or keep it as it is?
I think they should keep it and essentially have like episodes where they think they might be on his trail trying to figure it out, but that shouldn't be the main focus of the show. If it's a loose continuation, don't focus on the old stuff, I think.
Okay. I think what they're going to do with this new show is they're going to go into an unused plot device for the Evil Leaper. They're going to really spell out the Evil Leaper stuff.
Interesting. So I just looked up what it is that Scott Bakula's been doing recently. He's been in What We Do in the Shadows TV show, which is apparently really good. I have friends who rave about it.
Oh my gosh, really me too. Taika Waititi.
Yeah, I've heard the show's great. I just haven't sat down and watched it. Our Flag is Death. Our Flag Means Death. I'm supposed to see that too. It's a pirate show. Did you get around to watching Everything Everywhere All at Once yet?
I did. It's amazing. Go see it. Before I went and saw it, my top 3 favorite movies were Jurassic Park, Independence Day, and Back to the Future. After seeing it, my top 3 favorite movies are Everything Everywhere All at Once, Independence Day, and Jurassic Park. Sorry, BTTF.
It's such a good movie. All right, that was my last little time travel bit I wanted to bring up. Do you guys have anything else you want to talk about for this episode? Or
Nope, I know I'm good.
No, this has been great. Really appreciate your time tonight, gentlemen. Always a pleasure hanging out with you on a Monday night. Everybody else, we hope that it's a bright and early Tuesday morning for you. May your car ride, commute, or remote work be visited by the Star Trek deities. And always remember to go boldly with Beyond Trek Podcast.
Hey everybody, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to our Patreon and Anchor supporters. Big thanks to Stephanie Baker, S. Tam, Anne Marie, Jim Cook, and Nora Hickson. We really appreciate your support. Thanks for being a part of Beyond Trek Podcast.
We are Beyond Trek Podcast. Lower your inhibitions and surrender your years. We will add inspirational and hilarious Trek content to your day. Your attention will adapt to subscribe to us. Resistance is futile.